Hello, friends. I'm Nicole Song, and this is the School of Self Worth. Today, I am so excited to talk to you about a blind spot that I see coming up for so many Asian American women. And this one is juicy. This one is good. Like, it's so good. It gets its own episode. You really do not want to miss what I'm going to talk to today. And that is the main block that is getting in the way of you and your visibility at work. And I'm going to talk about the block itself and how to start doing things differently. So make sure to tune in. And before we get started, if you're a high achieving Asian American corporate leader who wants to feel valued and visible so you nail the next promotion cycle, you need the intuitive decision making system. DM me intuitive at Nicole Song on Instagram. I've got more details over there for you. Okay, friends, let's do this. Let's talk about this amazing topic. All right. I feel like I have to give you all a little bit of a warning with this one because what I'm about to tell you is probably going to hurt a little bit. Maybe not a little bit, and maybe even a lot. And I pride myself on being direct and honest with my listeners, with my clients. It's something that I think is really important that people speak to. So this one is going to be maybe a little bit painful. And this particular block also comes back to cultural conditioning and the way you were raised. So, we're here to talk about the main thing that is actually blocking your visibility. This is a thing that's really getting in the way. And the reason this is going to feel really hard is because this is something that you have probably really highly valued your entire life. And when we have something that we really value, it can be really hard to let go of. It can be really hard to be like, this is not the thing to do anymore. And I feel like I had to for myself, like I went to an Ivy League college, and I was a journalist and I really valued information. So I had to do a lot of work to untangle myself from this particular one. I want it to be easier and faster for all of you, which is why I'm recording this episode. But I just want you to know, like, I've also done a lot of work for myself to move out of this block so that I can be visible in my life, so that I can go on television, I can write books, I can have a podcast and share with you really powerfully what it takes for Asian American women to step into a different level of visibility. So, first, I'm going to talk about the conditioning that got you to this block. So, this conditioning is coming from the way you grew up. And it's going to come from essentially the values that your family probably instilled in you around hard work. And so, in terms of family, right, like they typically have immigrated, they took a lot of risks for you to have the life that you have, and then they have high expectations for you. And part of that is the immigrant mentality, and then part of that is also Asian culture, which is valuing, the whole and the collective. So when you are valuing the collective, how you perform as an individual is reflective of the whole. So your family's pride is really based very much on how you're doing in school. And so what you probably learned growing up is that you should work really hard and you should be the smartest one with the best grades. And the way to do this typically is to just work super hard, collect a lot of knowledge, always have the answers in school, and always have, the great grades, which does really require a lot of information, especially the kind of learning we get in public school system, private school systems in the United States. So if you're doing all of this, right, you're like working really hard and having more knowledge is how you advance. And it actually works, like, especially when you're in school, having more knowledge works. You study a lot, you get a lot of information, and then you take tests or you write essays, and then that's how you advance. And this is how you get into college. And then in college, that same system also still applies. The more knowledge you have and the more you study, typically that ends up with the outcome of good grades. And then those good grades help you get your first job. And it also probably has helped you the first 10 or 15 years of your career, that when you work really hard and you have a lot of knowledge, like you go into a corporate job, you learn their systems, you learn all the things that they're asking you to do, it works because that's how that works. When you are lower level, you are the workhorse. You are the person getting things done. You're the person who has to understand the back end. You're the person who has to, have the details in that. But this is where then this system stops working when you want to be a leader. The system stops working when you want to be a manager. You want to be the person who is making strategic decisions and be seen as a leader. Because leaders are not the people who have all the details. They're not the people who are lost in the weeds. They're not the people who have all the information. And in fact, they would not be a very good leader if they were always lost in the weeds. And I'm not saying leaders shouldn't have details and information and understanding. They should. And oftentimes, what I see happening with Asian American women, and this is their main block, is they value that information over strategic, intuitive decision making. And so what they're doing is they're valuing how much they know, and they think that how much they know is going to help them advance. When in fact, what a boss is looking for is someone who is strategic, who is intuitive, and who is making decisions quickly. And what can happen is when you're the person with all of the information, you actually make decisions slowly because you're like pro and con. We could go this way, we could go that way. There's like so much information. And so then it starts to become overwhelming to make fast decisions. It gets very easy to overthink when you have all of that information. Instead of learning to tap into a place where you are intuitive, you're strategic, you're always thinking big picture. If you think about it, like if you had a boss who was always lost in the weeds, you might actually have thought they're a little bit of a micromanager. They're always looking over your shoulder. They're asking you why you're not doing certain things instead of being able to talk to you about the big picture of the direction they want your team to go. And then you are tasked with executing from there. But this is really challenging. I find this so challenging for Asian American women, and they actually often get the feedback that you're lost in the weeds, you have too many details, like you're not big picture enough. And what is often missing from that feedback is they don't actually tell you how to be different. They don't tell you how to be an intuitive strategic leader and what it takes to go to that next level of management. And you're like, but I'm trying so hard, I'm working so hard. And so now you're like doing extra hours and you're making extra decks, or you're making a really comprehensive deck to make sure that people understand your position. And they don't care. Like, I mean, of course they like a nice deck, but that's not actually what it's about. They want to see and to trust that if they had a major decision to make, that they can trust you to give them really good feedback and to tell them intuitively what you sense versus all the things that you know. And that's what I bet many of you are doing. You are telling your bosses in leadership everything that you know, and you're sending them all these emails with so much detail, and they're just like, I do not want that. They want to hear short, quick, to the point. Like, we've looked at everything, and these are the two things I recommend, instead of getting bogged down all the time. So it's really important for you to start to understand, like, this is what you need to do, is to learn to make fast, powerful decisions. And what that will do is help you become the person that they trust, the person that they feel that they can go to for strategic decisions, because it's not like your bosses always have the answers. And then they do know you're a little closer to the ground than they are. And they also want to trust and feel like you are doing something that nobody else is doing. And on top of it, like, if you really want to put the cherry on top, you're doing this grounded and calm. I was talking to a woman the other day who's really been feeling frustrated about advancing and promotion. And she was also really upset around things that were happening around her at work. And I was like, do you know leaders who get upset all the time? And if they do, are those the leaders you trust? Or do you trust the leaders who are calm, who are grounded, who don't get ruffled by things? And I don't know about you, but I know that most of the leaders that I've experienced are so calm. They can handle anything. They don't get ruffled by small things or big things. They stay steady within themselves. And then that's how they can really make these intuitive decisions I'm talking about. So, really, there's two pieces to this. It's like understanding first that that's the kind of decision making you want to step into as a leader. And then, secondly, it's like, how do you calm your emotional reactivity? How do you break that cycle so you can be that unruffled leader? And then that's how you're going to start making these intuitive decisions. It's so essential that you really start to lean into that. So you have to learn to manage the emotional piece of it. And then also now learn to tap into that intuitive decision making, which is strategic, which is always going to be so much more innovative than anybody else around you. And it's also going to be so much simpler. The cool benefit of being in an intuitive decision making system is it is fast. You are not having it on, you're not overthinking, you're not doing pro and con lists. You're actually leaning into this really amazing system within yourself to learn to make decisions fast. And that's why I break it down in my intuitive decision making system, because for most people, They're making it complicated. They don't even know how to start to access that. But this is how you become the go-to person. This is how you become the person that when they're looking around and they're trying to figure out like someone has left or it's time to go through the next promotion cycle, they're going to see you because they're like, wow, she's been making really smart decisions. She's been quick about it. It's been really cool and interesting and strategic. And it's been more creative than what we're experiencing from the rest of the team. And then you become that person. You become the person they're already eyeing for their promotion before it begins. Because the truth is, they are doing that already. They're already talking about the team before promotions are available. They're looking around to be like, who would be the person we want to support? Who's a person we want to mentor to get them to that next stage? So this is a huge piece of it. It's like, how do you start to, and then you're like, okay, Nicole, how do I start to do it? Well, the first step is to start to break that emotional reactivity cycle. So I have podcast episodes on this, and it's really time for you to learn to like, how can I be a calm, grounded person? And I'm not even talking about just externally, because you might be like, well, I don't show upset at work. Are you still upset inside? Because if you're still upset inside and you're still reactive, people know. People are clear that like you get upset. And think about if you manage your own team and the people who get upset all the time, like, do you enjoy giving them feedback? Do you enjoy talking to them about this? Or do you wish, man, it'd be really nice if they could just settle themselves so we could have a productive conversation? So that's the first step. And then the second step is starting to learn to listen in a different way to information and to stop listening to all the noise that's out there. So this includes you starting to tune out noise in the world. And I'm talking social media, internet scrolling, because all of that stuff is interfering. It's like when, radio dials, when you're tuning it up and there's like that fuzz, that's what all that noise is. And you are listening to the fuzz rather than to the clarity of a channel where you're like, oh no, like there's actually something different for me to start to listen to. So for you, that next step would be also to start to really be good with boundaries around the noise. Are you checking your email first thing in the morning as you roll out of bed? Are you messaging late at night? Are you not putting any boundaries around your personal time? Here's the thing to know about your brain. Your brain is like a muscle and you cannot use it 24 hours a day, just like you cannot weight lift 24 hours a day. Your brain needs breaks. And the next thing for you to do is to start to understand and actually take mental breaks where you're not listening to a podcast. And I know you're listening to a podcast right now, but I'm just saying sometimes it's good to take a walk without a podcast. Can you actually have silence and time? Or is that something that you're nervous or anxious about? And if you're like, I don't ever do that, then this is that reminder for you to start to be like, well, it's time to actually start to give myself a little bit of a break from all of this noise that's out there. And I know that we know this and this advice is given out consistently. And there's a reason that it's given out consistently, right? So for you, it's like that 2-step framework is to first start learning to manage your emotions in a totally different way. And if you're like, I struggle to do that, well, then DM me on Instagram at Nicole Song, and we'll talk about how to start to break that emotional reactivity cycle because it is so essential. That really has to be the first step. And for all of my clients in Your Clear Calling, that is the very first thing we focus on. The first 30 days is breaking that emotional reactivity because that's the only way you can start to become and step into the leadership that who you want to be and all of that. And like in my episode with my client, Sydney Powell, she talks about this when she really started to break that emotional reactivity cycle, like work just became a totally different experience. And now she is someone who is considered a go-to and and her boss says like, you are the easy one. Who doesn't want to be that easy one? Because that easy one is the person where they start to look at how to lift you up. Because if you're easy, that means you're going to be really easy to support, to manage other people. So those are the 2 steps, is to really start to get a grip on the emotional side of things for yourself, to not take work things personally and to not be thinking about that all the time. And then the second one is to start to set some really good boundaries around the noise in the world, including the noise in your own head, right? Getting yourself out of these cycles where you're constantly listening to other people and start to learn to listen to yourself in a clearer way. And if you're like, I guess I could do that, but I would really want some support. I mean, all of my clients, we work on this consistently because it does take support and accountability for us to really learn to listen to the world in a different way than we're listening to it right now. So if you're just like, okay, I'm ready to learn more about how to really get into this intuitive decision-making system, DM me at Nicole Song on Instagram, and we're going to talk about it. And I'm happy to share with you more details about really dialing in the system and supporting yourself to be the most visible, valued, and strategic leader that I know exists inside of you, for you to unlock that full potential so that you're getting the visibility, you're getting the recognition, you're getting the trust, and it shows. And it shows. All right, friends, what a fun conversation. DM me again if you have any thoughts about this, or if you're like, wow, I really want to go to that next stage and really look at your clear calling. And I can't wait to hear from you there.